Chapter 70, May 22nd, 2020, 9:03 a.m. As soon as I got home and said hello to my mother, I went straight to my room. Seeing my father's alternate side made me want to punch something or at least listen to music on full blast. That's the greatest feeling right there, blasting good music, I mean. And if you have one of those 5.1 or 7.1 surround sound speakers, I bet it sounds even better. My ultimate wish is to hear the song Money by Pink Floyd in surround sound. It would be like being at a concert. I'd kill to see that Pulse tour they did, you know, the one where David Gilmour plays a 4-minute guitar solo during Comfortably Numb. Sickest concert ever. I went with the latter option and put on Never Again by Nickelback, turning it up to the maximum volume. I knew that I'd probably drive my neighbors insane with my loud music, but I didn't give a crap at that moment. Besides, it's not like I was playing anything terrible. You may be asking why I picked that song. It helps me deal with my homicidal thoughts against my uncle with its lyrics. I've never once heard him say that he loved either Grace or me. He only loves booze, money, and playing Texas Hold'em poker with his alcoholic cronies. Once, he even invited me to play and drink with him while drunk as a skunk. I reminded Dante that I was underage, and I remember he casually replied with, so what? If nobody saw it, it never happened. Who cares about laws and rules? I know I sure as hell don't. After he went to sleep, I poured his bottles of Bacardi down the kitchen sink. The next day, he found out and split my lip. Real stand-up guy, I know. I just want my dad to be normal again. Is that too much to ask for? After that, I played Civil War by Guns N' Roses to calm myself down. My mother loves that song, and I don't blame her, it makes me emotional. My dad once showed me the movie the song's intro sampled, Cool Hand Luke. I thought it was really dull. A film I like that's not too exciting is Johnny Got His Gun. It's what turned me into a pacifist. War sucks for everyone but the rich. They send all the poor high school graduates to die for them. Let me get this straight, at 18, I can die fighting for my country, but I can't enjoy a goddamn drink? As I was listening to it, my dad walked into my room and, with an annoyed expression, told me to turn the music way down. This wasn't like him in the least. He typically loved the music I played, no matter how loud it was. It's crazy how someone can change overnight for the worse. It's like they wake up a completely different person. Fine, I grumbled as I turned it down. After he left, I listened to music with headphones since I could listen to it as loudly as I wanted to. I looked everywhere for my Panasonic RPHJE 125Z headphones and finally found them in the strangest location possible. Somehow, they ended up inside one of my drawers. I grabbed them and put the earphones in. I played Not Gonna Die by Skillet and just laid on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I first heard Skillet when I was around 13. I still remember listening to Monster for the first time and falling in love with the band. It became a part of the holy trinity of metal bands for me. The three were Slipknot, Skillet, and Linkin Park. It's a shame that Chester isn't with us anymore, though. As I stared at the ceiling, I started hallucinating the weirdest things. One bizarre thing I saw was Jeff Goldblum's head rotating 360 degrees as if he was possessed. I do not know why I hallucinated that to this day, but I must admit that I found it amusing. Bones? What are those? After that strange hallucination, I started seeing random bright blue math problems in my handwriting and me playing Titan Quest. The latter hallucination tripped me out because I actually saw myself sitting on my computer and playing the game. I called out to myself quietly to see what would happen. The hallucination looked at me and waved. Not gonna lie, that creeped me out a bit. The next thing I hallucinated was me getting my ass repeatedly kicked in Cuphead. I died a minimum of 36 times. I counted. I kept losing the King Dice stage and felt pissed off just watching the hallucination because it reminded me of how much I used to play the game. I abhor it, but I love it at the same time. I guess I'm a masochist deep down. The next hallucination that I experienced was an auditory one. and I found it hilarious. I heard a Zoom meeting for our English class. It was so detailed that I could interact with the TA using my thoughts and have her respond to me. We talked for around 3 minutes before I got bored and got up off my bed and stretched. Only thing was, I wasn't wearing any pants, and the TA called out in horror, "Clive, put some pants on." I felt my face turn beet red and murmured for her to shut up. Surprisingly, she did, and the hallucination ended. What I witnessed next wasn't pleasant in the least. My doors started opening and slamming shut repeatedly, and I worried that my parents would come up and yell at me for making so much noise. It was so realistic that I had completely forgotten that it was all inside my head. The most WTF hallucination I remember seeing was one of seagulls flying all around my room and crapping out pipe bombs. Wherever the bombs landed, a hole would form in the ground. Angered by the birds, I got up off my bed and slapped a few of them in the head. To my surprise, my hand didn't go through them, and they had a lifelike texture to them. The birds I slapped got pissed off and started morphing into this giant seagull. When they were finished transforming into the abomination, the giant seagull looked straight at me and shrieked. Actually, calling it a shriek would be generous. It sounded more like the screams of the damned. I grabbed my drawing pen out of desperation and stabbed it right through the neck. The way it died defied all logic. It exploded into a million pieces of green glass, which melted into the floorboards and disappeared, never to be seen again. I swear, I'm going crazy. While the hallucinations temporarily stopped, the time skips only got started. You might be asking what it's like to experience one. Imagine you're sitting there chilling, and suddenly, you feel electricity shooting through your veins. Every time it happens, I can't help but jolt. Oh, and it's beyond nauseating, too. My stomach jumps like a kangaroo every time it happens. It feels a lot like falling, actually. The first skip I experienced sent me about 30 minutes into the future. My mother and I were in the middle of a conversation when the jolt kicked in. Suddenly, I forgot what we were talking about and felt severe nausea in my stomach. I had to try my absolute best not to show any pain. My mother would send me right back to the hospital if she saw what state of mind I was in. "So are you going to finish that thought, or what?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I honestly forgot what we were talking about," I said with a sheepish smile. "We were talking about Amaryllis." "You said you wanted to see her when and didn't finish your sentence," she said with a concerned look. My mother is always worried about me. I can't blame her for it, but it feels excessive at times. She once told me that she was prescribed Xanax for her anxiety when she was younger. She would call my uncle over to comfort her. Unfortunately, Uncle Dante used that as an opportunity to pop some pills. She stopped taking her meds because of his borderline criminal actions. That moron will try to get high off anything. He's the type of guy who would pretend to be a horse to score some ketamine. "I want to see her during summer break is what I meant to say," I replied with the worst poker face in history. "I really don't see why you don't date her. She's perfect for you," she said, looking at me like I was a complete idiot. "Amaryllis is a splendid girl, don't get me wrong, but we're just too different to work well, you know?" "What do you mean?" she asked, confused. "Well, she thinks very positively of this world. I'm the polar opposite. I find problems with everything. If we were ever to date, we'd have constant conflict. I wouldn't want that for someone like her," I replied with a deep sigh. "That's a load of crap, Clive," she said, laughing at my stupid comment. I was about to reply and tell her it was all true, but I experienced a time skip forward before I could even open my mouth. Now, I was 2 hours into the future. I looked around and realized that I had somehow appeared in my bed. I looked at the outline of my legs underneath the blanket and saw that they were moving on their own. I laid there perfectly still, and yet they slid all around like ice cubes. Something caught my eye as I was lying there in bed. I noticed that my ceiling fan was going apeshit and swinging around in every direction. Typically, this would have been a nuisance, but it was so much worse this time around. The fan blades morphed into spider legs, and before I knew it, a giant wooden spider was crawling all over my room. It was also around this time that my paranoia got really bad. I heard my neighbors amicably discussing something, but in my mind, they were talking about how much they hated me and wanted me dead. I got so terrified listening to them that I locked my door to prevent them from getting anywhere near me. A few seconds after I locked it, I heard pounding and felt too terrified to check if it was real or a hallucination. I thought about asking the person on the other side if they were real or a hallucination, but I got worried that my parents would hear me. Eventually, I had to leave my room to use the restroom, and I felt pure terror walking through our hallway. We have several mirrors throughout it, and whenever I looked into one, I would see a bleeding hand pressing against the glass from the inside. It was as if someone trapped it inside the mirror. The bathroom wasn't that much better, in all honesty. There was this weird black goldfish that swam through the air in my bathtub in a seamless loop. The goldfish was the least of my worries. There was also the issue of hearing people knocking on the bathroom door every 5 seconds. Several of them spoke to me, but their voices were too muffled to make out what they were saying. Leave me alone, damn it. All of this faded in comparison to the mother of all hallucinations. I hallucinated that I was in the hospital again. I saw nurses all around me and asked them why I was in the hospital. The heart monitor by me beeped like crazy. I calculated that my heart beat 110 times per minute, which is exceptionally high for someone who's resting. You had a seizure, one nurse said, showing me my hospital papers. That was when I heard the heart monitor let out the most horrifying sound in existence. It sounded like code for "you're dead, kid." I felt a massive jolt in my heart and heard a nurse scream out that I was going into cardiac arrest. I returned to reality right after going into cardiac arrest, and my brain did not feel good in the least. I felt so confused and out of it that I questioned where I was. The bathroom looked the same as it always did, but my brain just refused to recognize it. After that all happened, I experienced another time skip and went forward in time about 9 hours. I saw my mom go into my room and tell me that dinner was ready. Thank God she wasn't a hallucination. I nearly went insane from experiencing them. I'll be down soon, I said with a sigh. At that moment, I felt absolutely no motivation to do anything. As I went downstairs, I saw a black mongrel rush past me with a rabbit in its jaws. This made little sense as we didn't have any dogs in the house. I was about to ask my mom if she saw the dog before I realized it was probably a hallucination. Good thing I didn't ask them about it. They would have sent me right back to the psych ward. Psych hospitals aren't the most enjoyable places on earth. I sat at the dinner table and saw that dinner today was beef stroganoff. That cheered me up right there because it's my favorite food. I felt a smile creep across my face and felt like everything was getting better for once. I know just how much you like it, my mother said with a genuine smile, brushing my hair. Thank you, I wasn't in the best mood earlier, I replied with a deep sigh. What's wrong? My dad asked out of nowhere. I had somehow completely missed him and practically forgotten about him. I guess my mind was just trying to ignore the terrible memories he gave me. It's just I met this one girl in the hospital and I miss her, I half lied. I certainly missed Madeline, but she wasn't the reason I was so upset. You certainly picked a strange place to get a girlfriend, my dad replied hysterically, laughing. Oh, shut up. Can I bring her over when she gets out? I promised to show her Inception. Of course. What's her name? My mom asked. Madeline, she's around my age, and she loves the band Queensryche. You have one of their CDs, Dad, I said with a small smile. She and my dad would have gotten along so well. I do. He asked stupidly. Yes, don't you remember? Operation Mindcrime, I replied with raised eyebrows. Nope, doesn't strike a bell, he said confusedly. After that awkward conversation, I finally started eating my food, and wow, was it delicious. I could have eaten 50 servings of it if I wanted to. I asked our Alexa to play the song Trance by Gorillaz as it popped into my mind while I was eating. I had a huge Gorillaz phase during middle school, and knew pretty much all of their songs. Clint Eastwood is my favorite song of theirs, although I admit the lyrics "I ain't happy, I'm feeling glad" make zero sense. Everything makes sense on drugs. Sounds a lot like the guy from Blur, my dad said, chuckling. It kinda is him, Dad, I replied, stifling a laugh. Oh, right. I remember when Song 2 was on nearly every radio, that and Tub Thumping. Man, that second song is so annoying. How bad could it be? My mom and I asked at the same time. Alexa, play Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba, he replied, shaking his head. I lasted about a minute before the song became unbearable. I swear it was probably the worst thing I ever heard in my life. Not only are the lyrics ridiculous, but the chorus is unspeakably annoying. If Weird Al did a parody of it, though, I'd watch it for the rest of my life. After I finished my food, I went back to my room and laid down in bed again. I swear, I spend most of my time in my bed. I put on Kyoto by Skrillex on my phone, and before I realized it, I had fallen asleep. I slept like a baby that night.